Once upon a time, there was a hero who didn't know that they were a hero. They didn't realize that they had been called to adventure and that they held in their hands an invitation to question, and if they choose, shift their life's narrative. That hero is you, and that time is now. The call to adventure is always unsettling, which is why heroes initially refuse the call. That is, until they receive help from a guide. With this support, they are able to take that step from the ordinary world into the extraordinary. Today, allow me to be the avatar or placeholder for your preferred guide. I invite you to pause for a moment and imagine who you would most like to guide you on this journey. Do you have someone in mind? Invite them to join you. If you're having difficulty thinking of a guide, consider some archetypal sages, Galadriel, Morpheus, or Yoda. And if you're having difficulty allowing yourself to be playful, you've just been given your journey's first gift, the gift of information. Are you ready? Let's cross the threshold to learn new skills and overcome challenges along the way. What you're experiencing right now is therapeutic fanfiction in action. We are combining the ancient power of story inherent in the monomyth, also known as the one myth or hero's journey, with pop culture stories, which I prefer to call modern mythologies, to empower you to rewrite the story of your life. Drawing on the power of narrative therapy, social constructionism, and play therapy, and with the wisdom of Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell, therapeutic fanfiction offers a source of healing and a language with which to understand the worlds both around us and within us. Bringing our modern mythological heroes out into the real world to help us fulfill our destiny unlocks the power of play that all humans need, regardless of their chronological age. This playful engagement with story is very similar to the way in which modern fanfiction writers rewrite stories that aren't serving them. We can learn a lot from fanfiction writers. These are folks who see a story and think, I can make this better, or more relevant, or more inclusive. Fanfiction writers may make slight adjustments to a familiar story, or change the story drastically in order to create a new narrative that feels more authentic to them. Some fanfiction is produced by huge corporations with multi-million-dollar budgets, and some is created by teens in their bedrooms late at night. And while one of those tends to get acclaim and the other derision, they are using the exact same skills. Skills that we can all harness to improve the story of our lives. The first and most transformative skill that we can take from fanfiction writers is questioning social constructs. Most people look at the world around them and assume that it is immovable, unchangeable, fixed. But the reality is that it was individual people, person to person to person, who lived and worked together, who began to create the story of their reality. These started as agreements for conduct that served them as a social group at the time. All of our beliefs and norms are socially constructed, created by human beings over time and accepted to the point that they are no longer questioned and are instead believed to be irrefutable fact. But these aren't facts at all, just stories. And stories can change. In fact, stories need to change. And it's best if we are in control of our own narrative. One of the greatest powers that therapeutic fanfiction gives us is the power to ask, what if? Over time, unchecked, stories can morph from agreed upon rules to immutable fact. This takes away our ability to choose. When we believe that there is no other way, no alternate story, we are stuck. And some stories are more persistent than others. While favored clothing styles and music genres are fairly malleable, gender and body norms are more entrenched. These stories become systems that have a power greater than the sum of their component parts. The science fiction television series Westworld is a useful story for conceptualizing this idea. So useful, in fact, that when discussing social constructionism, my collaborative partner and I call it the Westworld construct. Westworld, the series, centers on a Western-style amusement park created by human beings for other human beings, which sounds ordinary enough, but the park is an artificial world inhabited by humanistic robots called hosts. The park is completely fabricated, from the hosts themselves to the repetitive stories or loops that the hosts inhabit. Initially the idea of two men, the park becomes a complex system with writers and directors and investors, a story much bigger than its creators can control. The Westworld park is monitored and changed as needed when the powers that be deem it necessary or when the guests of the park demand it. And the loops are based on one very important construct that all of the humans agreed to. The hosts lack a consciousness or sense of self. This construct is not only incorrect, but dangerously so. In the Westworld series, both of the original creators have to reckon with the world they had made. And so do we, the creatures of Earth. It can be very difficult to look at the world around us and start to ask, how is this serving me and others? How is this harming me and others? But it's so important. We don't know what we don't know, but once we do, it is vital that we reevaluate our own story and the greater societal story in which we inhabit. When we begin to question Westworld constructs, such as how bodies are seen and portrayed in our culture, and how much this hurts us individually and collectively, we may find ourselves flooded with emotion. When we pause to notice these emotions, we may find that these intense feelings match the stages of grief: denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and acceptance. Eventually, we will also find meaning, but that comes later. Losing a story, even a story that no longer serves us, is a loss. And with loss comes the darkness. At this point of the hero's journey, we find ourselves in the abyss. This is a metaphorical death. If you are experiencing some emotional distress in this moment, simply notice it without judgment. This is a part of you trying to share important information. Perhaps take a moment to write down a thought you wish to return to later. The abyss is meant to change us, and change comes with discomfort. Whatever is happening in your mind and body is here to inform you. It's simply information. While the abyss is incredibly uncomfortable, it's important to remember that it is the halfway point of the hero's journey, not the end. The suffering is temporary to help us transform. This is a good reminder in this moment and in the future. When the story feels at its darkest, the light is just around the corner. So even though it might feel scary right now, I invite you to take a breath and remember that you aren't alone. Bring to mind your sage companion. Perhaps now is a good time to begin to add more characters to your fellowship. Much like Frodo Baggins had a fellowship of 8 others to help him carry his burden of the One Ring in The Lord of the Rings, we aren't limited to only one helper. And who you choose depends on the perils that you face. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, is an excellent companion for fighting orcs, but might be less suitable to aiding you in confronting your boss about your subpar performance review. Consider for a moment which characters from stories have resonated with you over the years. It might help at first to consider which stories you turn to when you are feeling a big feeling. To which worlds do you wish to return? The characters and stories with which you resonate, the ones that feel like home and family, these are your fandom attachments. My first fandom attachment was to the David Lynch television series Twin Peaks. I was admittedly too young to be watching this surrealist crime drama in 1990, and while many of the themes were lost on me, one was not. The character of FBI agent Dale Cooper, known as Coop to his friends, resonated profoundly with me. To my young mind, he was a study in duality that I didn't know could exist. He was quirky and compassionate, driven and kind, dapper and unpretentious. When he spoke in awe of going to a place both wonderful and strange, I realized that there was a place for me in this world. Throughout my life, I've returned to Twin Peaks when I needed a safe place to be strange, and it was wonderful. Coop was there for me, and still is, offering wisdom about the importance of daily gifts. Coop advises, every day, once a day, give yourself a present. Don't plan it, don't wait for it, just let it happen. Coop is definitely in my fellowship. And to keep him and Twin Peaks close to me, I keep an assortment of Twin Peaks iconography in my office. Every time I turn around, I'm reminded of Coop's wise words and the serene yet spooky world that welcomes me back exactly as I am every single time. These images and toys keep me grounded and attuned to my fellowship. Once you've found your own fellowship, consider having some of your own totems nearby. In this context, I'm using the word totem for its ancient meaning, as an object of power. You can find or create your totems to keep yourself connected to the extraordinary world. Just like Galadriel, the Lady of Light in The Lord of the Rings, offered Frodo the light of Arendelle to be a light to you in dark places when all other lights go out. You can turn to your own totem in your time of need to light the way. With our fellowship's help, we begin to make our way out of the abyss, and a number of revelations begin to arise, leading to questions. Of course I can make changes in my life, but what about the larger systems that I can't change? And how can I possibly be different in a world that is constantly applying pressure to me to conform to the rules? And you want me to play? I'm a grown-up. It seems that the darkness of the abyss did indeed shine a light on some questions brewing in our minds. In the same way that society is constructed person to person over time, this is how society is changed. It took more than one host to bring down the Westworld park after all, but one had to start the chain. To take down constructs like diet culture or systemic racism, individuals must work together as a cooperative writer's room, each choosing to change their individual narratives in order to change the greater story. As you begin to question the Westworld constructs that you see around you, it's important to verbalize, to normalize for others. Yes, it's uncomfortable to be the first, to step outside of the Westworld construct of your family or social group. But when they see you fortified by your fellowship, challenging the powers that be, they will begin to feel empowered to do so as well. It's a slow process, and it takes every one of us doing our part. It takes time for the greater systemic story to be changed, and we can make meaning from this struggle. To paraphrase Nietzsche and Viktor Frankl, a person can survive any how for a why. Facing the greater systems can be frustrating, but it can also be empowering, especially when we see others who are fighting our fight by our sides. Calling upon the sage Gandalf, I am reminded, all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. And yes, one of the things we must decide to do is give ourselves permission to be playful. The idea that only children need play is an outdated Westworld construct. If you allow yourself to play, you are inviting the world to be more playful with you. And in that moment, you are the spark that begets a dragon's fire, what Game of Thrones Daenerys might call the Dracarys of change. And with this knowledge, you're just about ready to start the journey home. As we make our way back towards the ordinary world, I give you this talk as a gift. I hope that you will return to the ordinary world changed, or at least with some new ideas to consider. The final task is yours alone, hero. Take this gift out into your community and share what you have learned. Offer this gift freely. Verbalize to normalize, play, change. While this chapter of your story is ending, the next one is yet to come. You have the power to save the world. I think I hear the call to adventure. Will you accept the call? To be continued.